Hi geographers, today we're going to represent data in a graphical format, and in this particular case we want to create a variant of a pie graph. It's called a donut graph. We have a few conventions that we follow when we're creating a pie graph or donut graph, and the first is that we always order our data from largest to smallest, and the reason we do that is that it therefore allows the automated features of Excel to represent that data in that order from a 12 o'clock position all the way around clockwise from largest to smallest. The only exception to that rule is where we have a category such as other, which usually comes last. So that is our exception in terms of largest to smallest. To create our graph, we need to click and drag to highlight our data set. We click on Insert. We choose in the chart section our pie graph drop down, and we have a donut graph. Now we can expand that up a little bit larger. In geography, we remove the chart title from inside the box, and the reason for that is that we assume that in the most cases you'll be importing this or dropping this into a data report or a field trip report of some sort where you're going to analyse it and you're going to need to refer to that figure. As such, you would introduce it into your document. You would insert a caption and you would give it a figure number and title, and you'd have the source underneath that. In this particular instance, we're now needing to add our data values. So we're going to the plus sign to the right, and it gives us an option for data labels. And you can see when I just hover over the top of it, it includes the numbers in terms of millions of tonnes of our cocoa bean production. Now, we do want to take up that option of having our data labels, but we also want to go into our other options that are available. So we have the value as opposed to the percentage, and we also want to introduce our category name to increase the readership of this particular graph. So by doing that, you can see that the information that's currently sitting in a key or legend is now attached to the graph itself. So we can remove our key or legend because we've created a key or legend that's on our donut graph. Now we want to make those a little bit more visible. So to be able to see them, we want to double click on each one and just click and drag it to the side, and you can see it creates its own leader lines. So we understand the connection between the data and the image. Now when we get up into these smaller areas where there is significant clustering of information, we need to be very, very careful in terms of the presentation of our information. We need to make sure that our names of our countries and their data values are presented such that they are in the same order as the information cells that we have. So we just need to play around a little bit to make sure that they're very easy to read and that they don't overstep and double up some of the information that we have available to us. Now we have one more, which is good old Ecuador. I'm going to move to Brazil down a little bit. And as you can see, I've got Ecuador that's interfering with the Dominican Republic. We'll move that out of the way. And now we have a clear representation of data. So we can understand that this information is approximately in order, or well, it is in the same order as our data sets. Now that makes it quite easy for us to read when we then drop that into a document. Now our second task is that we are going to go into the second tab and make some slight modifications. We still want us to be able to identify what this graph, this type of graph, and identify the information, but we need to make some changes. The first thing is that we need to identify that there is a need to reorder from largest to smallest. Now, as you can see, we have no other category. So it means that we can click and drag our data cells. We can go up into our Home tab, and we can see here there's a sort and filter. And sort and filter, we want to choose from largest to smallest, and it's going to say, do we want to expand the selection? Expanding the selection means that this data will always connect with the data in the cell beside it. And we want that to occur because otherwise we're going to get a reordering of this, but it won't be correct for the countries. So we leave that on expand the selection and we sort it. And as you can see, it has sorted it from largest to smallest. Now, that is the hardest thing that you have to do in terms of this donut graph production, because everything else is the same as what we have done with the previous graph. So we click and drag, we insert, pie graph options, donut graph, delete our chart title. We can also delete our legend. Now, as you can see, in this particular instance, our plus sign hasn't come up. Now, if that occurs, we can fix it quite easily. We go into the design section for our chart tools and we can go add chart element. We have our data labels there and we've got our more call out options as well. So that then allows us to go into our different options and look at what we need to be able to add. So if we go into this last one, our label options, we want to add our category name, and we are in exactly the same position as we were with the previous graph. We click and drag so that we move our information out from those colours to ensure that we can read it more clearly. Now this isn't quite as busy as the previous graph, so it's going to be a little bit easier to read. But again, we want to make sure that our data is presented in the same order as it is in terms of from highest to lowest. You've now very quickly created your two donut graphs. They are great side by side to be able to compare and contrast. And all we would need to do then is to add our figure numbers and titles. So we will come back to that a little bit later on.